I gripped the small wooden box in my hand, the walnut surface smooth beneath my calloused fingers. Outside the airplane window, white clouds drifted by like floating islands. The flight from Wisconsin to Chicago was just over an hour, but to me it felt like a journey 3 years in the making. 3 years since I last held my daughter, Eleanor. The photograph in my wallet had gone soft at the corners. Ellie laughing in her kitchen, a smudge of flour on her dark hair. She'd inherited that radiant smile from her mother, Carol. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final descent into O'Hare International Airport. The pilot's voice pulled me from my memories. A familiar sense of anticipation swelled in my chest. This jewelry box, I had spent all winter finishing it in my woodshop. A gift for my granddaughter, Sophia, so she could keep her grandmother Carol's ring safe when she was old enough. This was going to be a wonderful surprise. Ellie had no idea I was coming. She would surely squeal with delight, just like she used to when she was little. The taxi glided through Chicago's dense traffic, taking me to Lincoln Park, a neighborhood of shady trees and historic brick homes. "Here we are, sir," the driver said, pulling up to a charming house with white shutters. "Perfect." I paid him in cash, grabbed my overnight bag, and stood on the sidewalk, taking a deep breath of the city's spring air. I walked up the front steps, my heart hammering like a teenager's. What would I say? Maybe I'd joke that this old man finally figured out how to use airline booking websites. Or maybe I'd just open my arms. I pressed the doorbell, listening to the familiar chime echo inside. And then, silence. A heavy, empty silence. I pressed the bell again, holding it longer this time. Still nothing. "Ellie, it's Dad," I called out, knocking on the doorframe. Maybe they were in the backyard. I walked around to the side gate, peering through the wooden slats. The patio furniture was covered in a thin layer of dust. The small vegetable patch Ellie had been so proud of had withered into brown stems. A child's tricycle lay on its side in the grass. Returning to the front porch, my eyes caught the mailbox. It was overflowing, with envelopes and packages spilling onto the ground. I picked up a few letters. An electric bill from 3 weeks ago. Advertising circulars. The most recent postmark was from 10 days ago. My heart began to beat faster. The engineer in me kicked in. When a system fails, there is always a logical explanation. I cupped my hands against the living room window. It was dark inside, the curtains drawn. The house felt abandoned, though I could make out Ellie's art easel in the corner and Leo's toy cars scattered on the coffee table. "Excuse me, are you looking for the McCoys?" I startled and turned around. An elderly woman in a sun hat, holding pruning shears, was approaching from the house next door. "Yes, I'm Arthur Vance, Eleanor's father. Have you seen them lately?" She paused, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "Come to think of it, no. It's been awfully quiet over there. I usually hear the children playing in the morning, but—" She trailed off, studying my face. "Is everything all right?" "I'm sure it is," I replied, but my voice sounded unconvincing, even to me. A cold sense of unease began to creep into my mind, overpowering the warmth of the April afternoon. My surprise visit, it seemed, had uncovered something far worse than an empty house. I sank onto the steps, the wooden box slipping from my grasp and clattering on the concrete. Around me, the neighborhood continued its normal rhythm. A jogger ran past, earbuds firmly in place. The sound of a lawnmower started up somewhere down the street. Those ordinary sounds seemed to belong to another world, a world where my daughter wasn't missing. Time to call Ellie. My fingers trembled as they moved across my phone's screen, finding her name. I hit the call button, pressed the phone to my ear, and listened to the long rings with a growing sense of dread. 1 ring, 2, 3. Then it went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Ellie. Please leave a message." Her cheerful recorded voice was a knife to my chest. I hung up and immediately dialed again. Same result. Voicemail. The third time, I was determined to leave a message. "Hello." The voice that answered wasn't Ellie's. It was male, professional, and cautious. "Ellie? It's Dad. I'm in Chicago. I wanted to surprise you, but nobody's home." "Sir, this is Dr. Rivera from Northwestern Memorial Medical Center. Are you a family member of Eleanor Hayes?" The world tilted sideways. I gripped the phone tighter, my other hand grabbing the porch railing to steady myself. What? Yes, I'm her father. Why do you have her phone? Where is she? A pause stretched for an eternity. Mr. Vance, I'm very sorry to inform you that your daughter is currently in our intensive care unit. She has been receiving treatment for late-stage cancer, and her condition is critical. The words hit me like physical blows. Cancer. Critical. My vision blurred. That's impossible, I choked out. I spoke to her 3 months ago. She was perfectly fine. She just said she was tired from chasing the kids. Sir, I understand this is a shock. Stage 4 cancer can progress very rapidly, and patients often don't share their diagnosis with family right away. She has been under our care for several weeks now. Several weeks. The neglected garden, the overflowing mailbox, the silent house. Everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Where's Julian? Her husband? Where are my grandchildren? Another pause. I cannot comment on other family matters, Mr. Vance, but I strongly advise you to come to the hospital immediately. Your daughter has been asking for you. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. What's the address? I'm coming now. After he gave me the address, the line went dead. I stood up too quickly, my head spinning, and stumbled toward the street. A taxi. I needed a taxi. The hospital's address was burned into my mind. As I flagged down a yellow cab, one thought kept circling through my shock. How had I become the kind of father who learns his daughter is dying from a stranger on the phone? The taxi door slammed shut with a finality that seemed to seal my old life away. The leather seat beneath me felt foreign, too smooth, too normal for a man whose world had just collapsed. Through the window, Chicago traffic moved in its usual chaotic dance. People were heading home, picking up groceries, living their ordinary lives. Cancer, stage 4, critical. The ride was a painful, slow-motion film. Ellie taking her first wobbly steps toward me, teaching her to ride a bike, walking her down the aisle on her wedding day. Julian had promised to love and protect her. Where was he? Why hadn't he called me? The taxi pulled up to the hospital entrance just as evening began to paint the sky purple. A modern tower of glass and steel rose before me, imposing and clinical. Through the windows, I could see people moving purposefully through bright corridors. Doctors, nurses, families dealing with their own private crises. The automatic doors whispered open, revealing a lobby adorned with colorful art installations that seemed obscenely cheerful. I walked to the information desk. Oncology Intensive Care Unit, I managed to say, my voice hoarse. My daughter, Eleanor Hayes. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt endless, each glowing number, a countdown to devastation. When the doors opened, the antiseptic smell hit me immediately, that unique hospital mixture of cleaning supplies and human suffering. A compact man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses waited at the nurse's station. He extended his hand as I approached. Mr. Vance, I'm Dr. Rivera. I'm glad you made it safely. How is she? The question scraped its way out of my throat. Stable for now, he said, his tone gentle but direct. The chemotherapy hasn't been as effective as we'd hoped, but she's responding to the current treatment. She'll be relieved you're here. He led me down a hallway filled with the soft beeping of machines and hushed conversations. Through one doorway, I glimpsed an elderly man holding his wife's hand. Through another, a young mother read to a child with a bald head. Each room held its own universe of pain. Room 712, Dr. Rivera said softly, stopping before a closed door. I should warn you, the illness has taken a physical toll, but she is very much herself. Nothing could have prepared me. Ellie lay propped up in the hospital bed, a fragile figure lost in a tangle of wires and tubes. IV lines snaked from her arms to bags of clear fluid hanging on metal poles. She looked so small, a shadow of the vibrant woman who had danced at her wedding just a few years ago. Her dark hair was gone, replaced by a soft cap. But when her eyes found mine, her face transformed with the most beautiful, heartbreaking smile I had ever seen. "Daddy," she whispered. The single word hit me like a freight train. I crossed the room in 3 strides and carefully gathered her into my arms, terrified I might break her. She felt like a bird, all sharp angles where there used to be soft curves. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, the tears I'd been holding back since the phone call finally spilling over. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "I didn't want to worry you," she breathed against my shoulder, her voice thin and raspy. "You were still grieving, Mom, and I thought I could handle it myself." I pulled back to look at her, my hands smoothing the thin hospital blanket around her shoulders, the same way I used to tuck her in when monsters lived under her bed. "Why didn't you tell me? We could have fought this together." Her eyes, the same deep brown as her mother's, filled with tears. "The doctors said 6 months, maybe 8 with treatment. I kept thinking I'd get better, that I'd call you when I had good news to share. 8 months. Maybe less now." I settled into the chair beside her bed, taking her hand in both of mine. Her fingers were ice cold despite the warm room. "Where's Julian?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Her expression faltered. He said he had important business meetings this week. He'll be back before the weekend." But the way she looked away, toward the darkening window, told me everything. This was an excuse she had told herself 100 times. I spent the next hour just being present, holding Ellie's hand while she drifted in and out of a restless, medication-induced sleep. Each time she woke, her eyes would find mine immediately, as if to make sure I was still real, still there. During one of her deeper moments of sleep, a woman with a kind but weary face appeared at the door. She wore a simple blouse and carried a tablet. "Mr. Vance?" she asked softly. "I'm Evelyn Reed, the patient advocate here. May I have a word?" We stepped into the quiet hallway, the beeping from Ellie's room a faint, rhythmic counterpoint to our conversation. "I just wanted to introduce myself," she began, her gaze direct and empathetic, "and to see how you're holding up. This is a lot to take in." "It is," I admitted. "I didn't even know she was sick." "That happens more often than you'd think," Evelyn said, a flicker of professional sadness in her eyes. "Patients try to protect their families. Has her husband Julian been able to update you on her care plan?" It was a carefully worded question, a test. "I haven't been able to reach him," I said, keeping my voice even. "Ellie said he was away on business." Evelyn's expression didn't change, but I saw a subtle tightening around her mouth. "Yes, well, we've had some difficulty reaching him as well. Sometimes, when a family is under this much stress, other issues can come to the surface. Financial pressures, things like that. If you find you need any resources, legal or otherwise, please don't hesitate to ask me. My job is to support the patient, and that includes their family." She handed me her card. It wasn't an accusation, but it was a clear signal. She had seen this before. She suspected something was wrong, and now she was letting me know I had an ally. The conversation left me with a renewed sense of unease. I returned to Ellie's room and sat in the deepening shadows, watching the city lights begin to twinkle outside. Ellie's phone, still plugged into the wall charger, lit up with a notification. Instagram. I nearly ignored it, but then the screen showed the profile picture, Julian's smiling face. Without thinking, I picked up the phone. His story, posted just an hour ago, was at the top of the feed. I tapped it. The image that filled the screen made my blood run cold. It was the deck of a luxury boat, gleaming under a brilliant afternoon sun. Champagne glasses caught the light. In the foreground, a woman's manicured hand held a flute in a toast. The timestamp read, 2 hours ago. My thumb swiped to the next picture. Julian's face, grinning broadly, arms slung around another man. Both wore expensive sunglasses, looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Behind them, the vast blue expanse of Lake Michigan stretched to the horizon. The caption, "Closing deals and making waves. Number Chicago Life." I swiped again. A video. Julian raising his glass to the camera. "Nothing like a few days away from the grind to clear your head," he said, his voice slick with smug satisfaction. "Sometimes you just gotta live a little, away from the grind." His wife was fighting for her life in a sterile hospital room, and he was getting away from the grind. A cold, methodical rage, unlike anything I had ever felt, washed over me. I began taking screenshots. Every picture, every caption, every timestamp, documenting the evidence. I looked from the phone's bright screen to my daughter's sleeping form. She was so pale, so still. He was living his life while hers was fading away. The betrayal was so profound, so monstrous. It felt unreal. But the evidence was right there, glowing in my hand. Julian wasn't just absent, he was celebrating. I left Ellie's room and made my way down to the hospital cafeteria, the screenshots of Julian's boat party burning a hole in my phone's memory. The place was mostly empty at this late hour, smelling of stale coffee and disinfectant. I sat at a small table in the corner, the image of Julian's grinning face projected onto the back of my eyelids. How does a man like that afford a life like that? Ellie had told me his consulting business was still in the startup phase. He drove a leased luxury car and wore clothes that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. It had never added up, but I had pushed my doubts aside for Ellie's sake. Then, a memory, cold and sharp, cut through my anger. A conversation from nearly a year ago. Julian, looking earnest and concerned, sitting at my kitchen table in Wisconsin. "Art," he had said. "With the cost of living in Chicago and Ellie's freelance work being so unpredictable, we're stretched a little thin. I'm worried about what would happen if there was a real emergency. A medical bill, a major home repair." He had proposed a solution. If I gave him authorized access to my backup savings account, the one I kept for my own emergencies, he could use it only if something serious happened. It would be a safety net, he'd promised, just to protect Ellie from financial stress. What a caring husband, I had thought. A man looking out for my daughter. My hands shook as I opened my banking app. I navigated to the savings account, the one I hadn't looked at in months, assuming it was untouched. The transaction history loaded slowly, each line item appearing like a fresh stab wound. Transaction: Lakeshore Yacht Charters, Chicago, Illinois. Amount: $12,500. Posted 2 days ago. Transaction: Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse. Amount: $950. Posted 4 days ago. Transaction: Ferrari of Chicago, service. Amount: $3,200. Posted 1 week ago. Transaction: Nyman Marcus. Amount: $4,800. Posted 2 weeks ago. The list went on and on. A months-long pattern of parasitic spending, a secret life funded by my trust. Every dollar he had spent on champagne and sports cars had come from my account. Every designer suit, every five-star meal, every moment of his carefree existence had been paid for by the father of the wife he had abandoned. The dates told the most sickening story of all. The spending escalated as Ellie's health declined. While she was going through her first round of chemotherapy, he was buying designer watches. While she was losing her hair, he was dining at the most expensive restaurants in the city. While she was lying in a hospital bed, he was chartering a yacht. The engineer inside me took over. Rage was a useless, inefficient emotion. Data was power. I began taking screenshots of every single transaction, my mind methodically building a case. I documented the dates, the amounts, the vendors. He had used my money to finance his betrayal. He had made one crucial, catastrophic mistake. He had forgotten that every transaction leaves a trail. And I was the kind of man who knew how to follow it. I found a quiet alcove near the hospital chapel, a space with a few wooden chairs meant for silent reflection. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to wage financial war just steps from a place of sanctuary. I took out my phone and the small notebook where I had written down the account numbers. The bank's emergency line answered on the third ring. "First National Emergency Services, this is Amanda. How can I help you?" "This is Arthur Vance," I said, my voice steady and professional. "I need to revoke authorized access on my accounts immediately." "Of course, Mr. Vance. I'll just need to verify your identity," she said, her tone polite and procedural. I rattled off my social security number and my mother's maiden name, information I hadn't had to give in years. "Thank you," Amanda said after a moment of typing. "I show a Julian Croft has authorized user status on your backup savings account and 3 associated credit cards. Are you requesting a complete revocation of his privileges?" "Immediate and permanent," I said, each word crisp and final. "Transfer all remaining funds from that savings account to my primary checking account. Cancel every credit card in his name. Remove him as an authorized user from everything. Erase him. Sir, I must inform you this action is irreversible and will terminate any automated payments linked to those cards. Are you certain you wish to proceed? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. One moment, please. The hold music was a bland, generic tune, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. While it played, I imagined Julian at a restaurant, confidently handing a black credit card to a waiter, only to have it declined. All right, Mr. Vance, Amanda's voice returned. I have revoked Mr. Croft's access to the savings account. The remaining funds are being transferred. His credit cards have been deactivated, effective immediately. Any attempted transactions will be declined. Is there anything else? Yes. Place a fraud alert on all of my accounts, linked to any attempt by him to gain access. That is already in place, sir. You'll receive confirmation emails within the next few minutes. I hung up. It was done. The digital paper trail of Julian's parasitic life had been severed at the source. My phone buzzed almost instantly. An email confirmation, then another, and another. Justice, delivered in electronic format. I walked back to the elevator, feeling lighter than I had in days. The crushing weight of unknowingly funding my daughter's abandonment was gone. I had cut out the cancer. Ellie was awake when I returned, staring at the ceiling. The room glowed softly from the monitoring equipment, a quiet bubble separate from the world outside. Hey, sweetheart, I said, pulling the chair close to her bed. How are you feeling? Better, now that you're here. She turned her head on the pillow, and I saw that something had shifted in her expression. Dad, I need to tell you something about Julian. I took her hand. Take your time, honey. I'm here to listen. He changed, she began, her voice barely a whisper. After Leo was born, he started saying I wasn't contributing enough financially, that my freelance design work was a hobby. He said I was a burden. My free hand clenched into a fist beneath the blanket, but I kept my voice gentle. You are raising 2 children. You are not a burden. When the cancer diagnosis came, he just shut down, she continued, tears welling in her eyes. He said the medical bills were ruining his future plans. He told me he'd married a partner, not a patient. She looked away, shame coloring her pale cheeks. I kept thinking if I just got better quickly, if I didn't complain, maybe he would come back, be the father Sophia and Leo deserve. Her voice broke. But he's not coming back, is he, Dad? As I held Ellie's hand, promising her she would never be alone again, my phone buzzed insistently. An unknown number with a Chicago area code. I knew who it was. I glanced at Ellie, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and anticipation. I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze and answered, putting the call on speaker. Hello, I said. My voice ice. Art, what the hell did you do? Julian's voice was a frantic shout, laced with humiliation. My cards were just declined. In front of everyone. You need to fix this, right now. I ignored his demand completely. Where are you right now, Julian? That's none of your business. Listen to me, old man. You restore my access this instant. Or, my daughter is dying in a hospital bed. I cut him off, each word dropping like a stone into still water. And you are partying on a yacht with my money. There was a stunned silence, then sputtering. How did you... This is business networking. Through the phone, I could hear it all. The faint sound of party music, the clinking of glasses, the waves of Lake Michigan lapping against a hull, the sounds of a man living a life his wife could only dream of from her ICU bed. $12,500 for a yacht rental, Julian, I said, my voice low and dangerous. My $12,500, while your wife was in intensive care. You can't just cut me off. I have rights. I'm her husband. You were her husband, I corrected him. I looked at Ellie, who had pushed herself up slightly, listening with rapt attention. You made your choice when you chose champagne over chemotherapy appointments. Listen, you don't understand the pressure I've been under, he whined. The pressure? My voice hardened. What pressure, Julian? The pressure of having unlimited access to my bank account while you abandoned your family. His tone shifted, becoming cold and calculating. It was his final, desperate move. You restore my access, or I file for divorce, and I take the kids. I'll make sure Ellie loses everything in court. I'll tell them she's an unfit mother. That was his mistake. The moment he threatened my grandchildren, Julian, I said quietly, and something in my tone, a deep and primal coldness, made him pause. You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life. I felt Ellie's sharp intake of breath. She was fully awake now, hearing her husband's true voice, for the first time selfish, threatening, and utterly without remorse. I know exactly where you are, I continued. I know what you've been doing. And I know precisely how much of my money you've spent. And now the whole world is about to know what kind of man threatens to steal children from their dying mother. You can't do this to me. I have a reputation. Your reputation is as fraudulent as your expense reports. I shot back. And yes, they are watching. They're watching a parasite get his credit cards declined because he can't pay his own bills. His voice cracked. Art, wait. Let's be reasonable. I made mistakes, but we can work this out. I'll come to the hospital. I looked at Ellie and saw tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, but of liberation. No, Julian, I said softly. We can't. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number. The action was as final as slamming a door shut forever. The silence that followed the phone call was absolute. The only sound in the room was the steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, a sound that suddenly felt less like a warning and more like a promise. Julian was gone, a ghost exorcised by a few hard truths. I sat beside Ellie's bed and gently took her hand, a hand that was no longer trembling. She was crying, but these were not the tears of a victim. They were tears of liberation, washing away years of fear and self-doubt. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You never have to thank me for protecting you, sweetheart, I said, bringing her knuckles to my lips, just as I had when she was a little girl who had scraped her knee. That's what fathers do. I was so afraid, she confessed, her gaze meeting mine without the shadow of shame I had seen there before. Afraid to leave him, afraid of being alone with the kids and the illness, afraid of admitting I had made such a terrible, terrible mistake. You're not alone, I said, my voice firm with a conviction that filled the entire room. You will never be alone again. And this was not your mistake. It was his. Every selfish choice, every cruel word, every moment he chose himself over his family. That is on him, not you. For the first time since I had arrived in Chicago, a genuine smile touched Ellie's lips. It was a small, fragile thing, but it held more light than all the glittering city lights outside her window. It was the smile of a woman remembering who she was. Get some rest, I said softly. Tomorrow we start planning your future, a future where nobody gets to hurt you ever again. She closed her eyes, her breathing already deepening, more peaceful than I had seen it all day. I watched her sleep for a long time, the protective instinct in me roaring to life. The battle with Julian was over, but the war for Ellie's life and her children's future was just beginning. I pulled out my phone. My first call was to Evelyn Reed, the patient advocate. I explained the situation in quiet, concise terms. She listened without interruption, her voice full of professional calm when she finally spoke. Arthur, you've done the right thing. I can connect you with an excellent family law attorney who specializes in cases like this. We will get a temporary restraining order in place by morning. My next call was to my neighbor back in Wisconsin, a good man who had been checking on my house. I told him I wouldn't be home for a while. I was staying in Chicago. I was bringing my family home. The plan formed in my mind with the clear, logical steps of an engineering schematic. First, secure the legal protection for Ellie and the children. Second, make arrangements to have Sophia and Leo brought to a temporary caregiver until I could get them myself. Third, once Ellie was stable enough, I would transfer her to a specialized cancer treatment center near my home in Wisconsin. We were leaving Chicago and the ghost of Julian Croft behind for good. I looked at my daughter, sleeping under the watchful green glow of the monitors. She was a fighter. She had inherited her mother's strength. All she needed was a chance, a safe harbor to heal in. I would be that harbor. For the first time in 5 years, the fog of my own grief for Carol had completely lifted, replaced by a fierce and singular purpose. I had a family to save. 1 year later, sunshine streamed through the kitchen window of my home in Wisconsin. painting golden squares across the hardwood floor, where Sophia's art supplies lay in organized chaos. The sound of children's laughter drifted in from the backyard, mixing with the steady rhythm of Ellie chopping vegetables for lunch. I paused in the doorway, just watching my daughter. She moved with an energy and grace that had returned, month by month, a miracle woven from medicine, love, and sheer, stubborn will. Her dark hair had grown back, thicker than before, framing a face that glowed with health and a profound, hard-won peace. The haunted look was gone, replaced by the confident, resilient woman I had raised, the one who had been buried for years under the weight of a toxic marriage. "Dad, you're lurking again," she said without turning around, a familiar, teasing tone in her voice that told me everything I needed to know about her recovery. "Just appreciating the view, sweetheart," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "Still can't quite believe you're really here, making a mess in my kitchen." Through the window, I could see Leo, now a sturdy 7-year-old, teaching his older sister how to throw a perfect spiral with a football. At 9 and 7, they had adapted to their new life with the incredible resilience that children possess when they are finally truly safe. They were home. The divorce had been swift and brutal, just as Julian deserved. His threats about custody evaporated the moment his lawyer reviewed the evidence, the bank statements, the screenshots from the yacht, and the court order I'd had filed for financial abuse. A man who abandons his terminally ill wife to party with her father's money is not a sympathetic figure in family court. The judge had stripped him of his parental rights and issued a permanent restraining order. We hadn't heard from him since, and we never would again. He was just a ghost, a bad dream they were all waking up from. "Grandpa," Sophia's voice called through the screen door, "come show Leo how to catch better. He's dropping everything." "In a minute, honey," I called back, turning to Ellie. "How are you feeling today? Really feeling?" She set down her knife and faced me, and I saw in her clear, bright eyes what her doctors had confirmed 3 months ago: complete remission. "I feel like myself again," she said. Maybe even better than myself. Stronger." The kitchen timer chimed, and she pulled a pan of cornbread from the oven. It was Carol's recipe, the one I had taught her when she was a teenager. Some traditions were worth preserving. "You know," she said, setting the hot pan on a cooling rack, the warm, comforting smell filling the kitchen, "I'm thinking of starting my own design firm, for real this time. No more freelancing. A real business, with my own name on the door." I smiled, my heart full to bursting. The storm had passed. The woman standing before me wasn't a victim. She was a survivor. Later, as evening painted the Texas sky in shades of orange and pink, the 4 of us sat on the front porch swing. It was the same swing that had been Carol's favorite feature of our old house. A piece of our past I had carefully salvaged and rebuilt here, where it belonged. Sophia dozed against my shoulder, her small body warm and heavy with sleep, while Leo peppered me with questions about the stars beginning to appear overhead. "Will you tell us the story about how you saved Mom again?" Sophia mumbled, half asleep. I smiled, pulling the blanket tighter around her. "Sweetheart, your mom saved herself. I just helped clear away the obstacles." "Like the bad man who went away," Leo added, his voice small but certain. "Yes," I said softly, "like the bad man who went away." Ellie, sitting beside me, reached over and squeezed my hand. It had become our shorthand, a silent gesture for gratitude, for love, for the kind of unbreakable bond that a crisis either forges or shatters. We had chosen unbreakable. This, I thought, watching my grandchildren's eyelids grow heavy in the peaceful twilight, is what winning really looks like. It isn't the dramatic moment of confrontation, though watching Julian's world crumble had brought a certain grim satisfaction. The real victory is found in the thousands of quiet, ordinary moments that follow. It's the Tuesday evenings when nobody is fighting for their life, nobody is betraying a sacred trust, and the only drama is whether Leo will finish his vegetables. The stars emerged one by one, the same constellations Carol and I had watched from this very swing decades ago, back when Ellie was the age Sophia is now. Some things change. Marriages end. People disappoint you in ways you can never imagine. Illness tests every assumption you have about fairness. But some things endure. The love between a father and a daughter, the resilience of children, and the profound, quiet quiet satisfaction of protecting what matters most. Tomorrow, Ellie would present the first drafts for her new design firm while the kids attended their new school. I would tend to the garden that Carol had always wanted, and perhaps start that woodworking project for Sophia's dollhouse. A normal life, the kind worth fighting for. Tonight, though, we just sat together under the vast, starry sky, 3 generations, bound by love and tested by fire, finally safe in the peace we had earned together. My house was no longer quiet with loss, but filled with the sounds of a family reborn, and as my grandchildren slept soundly in my arms, I knew I had fulfilled my promise to Carol. Our family was whole again. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.